You've been taught to reject the darkest parts of yourself, your anger, your ambition, your desire for power, your selfishness, your jealousy, your shame. But what if everything you've been taught to suppress is actually the source of your greatest strength? Today, we're exploring Carl Jung's shadow and why confronting it might be the most transformative decision you ever make. Most people spend their entire lives running from themselves. They wake up, put on a mask, go to work, come home, and repeat, all while ignoring a fundamental truth. Inside you, right now, there are parts of yourself you've labeled bad, parts you've learned to hide, parts you believe will ruin you if anyone ever sees them. These aren't pathological. They're not a sign you're broken. They're what psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow, and nearly everyone has one. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's actually the source of power most people will never access. But here's the problem. By rejecting it, by pretending it doesn't exist, you're giving away your own strength. You're walking around only using half of who you are. And the people who do confront their shadow, they become different, stronger, more authentic, more dangerous, in the best sense of the word. So today, we're asking, what if your shadow isn't something to fix, but something to master? Before we go further, you need to understand who Carl Jung was, because his ideas changed psychology forever. Jung was born in Switzerland in 1875. He started his career as a protege of Sigmund Freud. You know, the guy who talked about everything being about your mother. But Jung didn't stop at Freud's ideas. He went deeper. Jung studied mythology, alchemy, Eastern philosophy, and religion. He interviewed patients across cultures, and through decades of research, he came to a radical conclusion. Your unconscious mind isn't just a dump for repressed desires. It's a vast, intelligent reservoir of everything you've rejected about yourself. He called this the shadow. Jung published his most influential work, his theories on the collective unconscious and archetypes, in the 1950s. And his ideas became the foundation for modern psychology, therapy, and personal development. But here's what most people miss. Jung's shadow work isn't about therapy. It's about psychological integration, becoming whole. And that's the framework we're exploring today. Let's define the shadow clearly. The shadow is the sum of all the traits, desires, impulses, and instincts within you that your conscious mind has rejected, denied, or repressed. In other words, it's everything about yourself that you believe is bad, wrong, shameful, or unacceptable. Think about it this way. When you were a child, you were taught certain behaviors were good, being nice, being obedient, being humble, being kind, and certain behaviors were bad, being aggressive, being selfish, being ambitious, being dishonest. So what did you do? You internalized these rules. You started suppressing the bad parts. You pushed them down into your unconscious mind, but they didn't disappear. They're still there, still active, still influencing your behavior, your relationships, your choices, even though you're not consciously aware of it. That collection of rejected traits, that's your shadow. And here's the crucial insight. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's not something to destroy. It's a part of you. And like every part, it has a purpose. Your anger can fuel your strength. Your ambition can drive your success. Your selfishness can protect your boundaries. Your jealousy can reveal what you actually want. The problem isn't that these traits exist. The problem is that you've exiled them, and that exile costs you dearly. Let's start with the most important truth about your shadow. It contains your actual power. Think about the people you admire, the The ones who seem to command respect, the ones who get things done, the ones who aren't afraid to pursue what they want. What do they have in common? Most of them have integrated their shadow. They've stopped pretending to be nice all the time. They're willing to be aggressive when necessary. They're unapologetically ambitious. They set boundaries without guilt. And because of that, because they're accessing their full psychology, they're more powerful than the people around them. Now let's look at the flip side. The people who are always nice, who never stand up for themselves, who apologize constantly, who feel guilty when they assert their needs. They're not virtuous. They're not enlightened. They're weak because they've cut themselves off from half their psychological capacity. Jung understood this. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your shadow is running your life right now. It's just running it from the basement where you can't see it. But the moment you acknowledge it, the moment you stop pretending it doesn't exist, you take back control. You access your anger and use it to fuel unstoppable determination. You access your selfishness and use it to prioritize your own growth. You access your competitiveness and use it to excel beyond your peers. This is what shadow integration looks like. Not becoming a better person in the moral sense, but becoming a complete person. A person operating at full capacity. And that person, they're formidable. Here's what happens when you deny your shadow. You start living inauthentically. You edit yourself constantly. You perform kindness you don't feel. You suppress honest opinions. You smile through resentment. And this performance, this constant masking, is exhausting. Your psyche is expending enormous energy, keeping your shadow repressed. Energy that could be going into creativity, ambition, relationships, and growth. Instead, it's going into pretense. Let me give you concrete examples. Example 1. The workplace. You have an idea in a meeting, a really good idea, but you hesitate to share it because you're afraid of seeming too ambitious. You don't want people to think you're arrogant, so you stay quiet. Someone else shares a similar idea. They get the credit, they get the promotion, and you go home frustrated. But you don't understand why. Because you've never acknowledged the truth. You have ambition. You want power. And by rejecting that desire, you've sabotaged yourself. Example 2. The relationship. Your partner does something that angers you, something genuinely disrespectful, but instead of expressing that anger directly and honestly, you suppress it. I shouldn't be angry, you tell yourself. I should be understanding. So you swallow it. You smile. You pretend everything's fine. But resentment builds, and after months of this, you explode over something trivial, or you emotionally withdraw. The relationship deteriorates, and you think the problem is them, when the real problem is that you denied your own legitimate anger. You denied a crucial part of your shadow. Example 3. Personal ambition. You have dreams, big ones, but somewhere along the way you learned that wanting things too badly is selfish. So you downplay your ambitions. You tell people you're happy wherever life takes you, and then life takes you nowhere. You stay in a mediocre job. You never start that business. You never pursue that relationship. And at 50, you look back with regret. Because the cost of denying your shadow, denying your genuine desire for success, for impact, for significance, is a life of quiet desperation. This is the real cost of shadow denial, not moral failure, not being a bad person. It's the loss of your own power, and the only way to reclaim it is to stop pretending your shadow doesn't exist, to say, yes, I want power. Yes, I have ambition. Yes, I can be selfish when needed, and that doesn't make me evil. It makes me human. The moment you acknowledge that, the exhaustion of pretense lifts, and you can direct your actual nature towards something constructive. Here's something most people never realize: you attract, or become obsessed with, the very people who embody your shadow. Most people think confidence comes from positive thinking, from affirmations, from telling yourself you're good enough, but that's fake confidence. It's confidence on top of denial, and it's fragile. Real confidence, unshakable confidence, comes from integration. Let me explain. When you deny your shadow, part of you is always afraid. Afraid that people will discover the real you. Afraid that your anger will show. Afraid that your ambition will be exposed. So you're constantly vigilant, constantly filtering yourself, constantly worried about how you're perceived. And that worry reads as insecurity. People can sense it. They sense that you're not fully present, that you're performing, that there's something you're hiding, and their unconscious responds by doubting you. Energy that could be going into creativity, ambition, relationships, and growth. Instead, it's going into pretense. Let me give you concrete examples. Example 1. The workplace. You have an idea in a meeting, a really good idea, but you hesitate to share it because you're afraid of seeming too ambitious. You don't want people to think you're arrogant, so you stay quiet. Someone else shares a similar idea. They get the credit, they get the promotion, and you go home frustrated. But you don't understand why. Because you've never acknowledged the truth. You have ambition. You want power. And by rejecting that desire, you've sabotaged yourself. Example 2. The relationship. Your partner does something that angers you, something genuinely disrespectful, but instead of expressing that anger directly and honestly, you suppress it. I shouldn't be angry, you tell yourself. I should be understanding. So you swallow it. You smile. You pretend everything's fine. But the moment you integrate your shadow, the moment you stop pretending to be something you're not, something shifts. You're more present, more authentic, more solid. You can say no without guilt, because you've acknowledged your legitimate right to prioritize yourself. You can be assertive without apology, because you've accepted that you have the capacity for assertiveness. You can pursue your goals unapologetically, because you've stopped buying into the lie that ambition is selfish, and people feel that, they respond to it. That's not to say they'll all like you. Some won't. But the ones who do will trust you more deeply, because they sense you're real. This is what happens to people after they do genuine shadow work. They report feeling more grounded, more at ease, more themselves. Not because they've become better people in some moral sense, but because they've stopped fracturing themselves. They're no longer divided against themselves. And that internal unity, that's where real power comes from. I want to emphasize something important. This isn't about becoming a jerk. It's not about acting on every impulse or abandoning ethics. It's about knowing yourself fully. It's about choosing how to express yourself, rather than having your shadow make that choice unconsciously. If you know you have the capacity for anger, you can choose when and how to express it. You can use it constructively. If you know you have ambition, you can pursue it consciously and ethically. You can set boundaries. If you know you have selfishness, you can use it to protect your own needs, without it running your life.
You don't have to share it publicly if you don't want to. Write it in the comment, then delete it, or just write it in your journal. But acknowledge it. Make it conscious. Third, do the 5-step framework I outlined. This week, give it 5 days. Record what shifts. How do you feel differently? What becomes possible? Fourth, If you found this valuable, share it with one person. Someone you know who's struggling with confidence or authenticity or power. This information can change lives. The truth is, most people will never do this work. They'll spend their whole lives running from themselves. They'll have unfulfilled relationships. They'll underachieve. They'll feel powerless. But you, by watching this, by considering this, you're already different. You're already asking the question, what if the parts of myself I've been taught to reject are actually my power? That question, just asking it, is the beginning of integration. Carl Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Shadow work is uncomfortable. It requires honesty. It requires confronting truths about yourself that you worked hard to bury. But the alternative, staying divided, staying powerless, staying asleep, that's a kind of pain too. That's the pain of a wasted life. So I'm asking you, which pain are you willing to choose? The pain of growth or the pain of stagnation? Because I promise you, on the other side of shadow work is a version of yourself you didn't know was possible. More powerful, more real, more alive. Your shadow is waiting, not to destroy you, but to make you whole. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.